Good morning, guys. Miss Sanchez here. Today we're going to jump right into our ELA lesson for today. Today is Monday, May 11th, 2020. Really wanted to start out really quickly by saying a huge thank you to everyone for doing all of their work, staying super engaged. I know it's difficult still being at home during this time. Just remember, we'll get through it. We'll be back to school in no time. Just work as hard as you can, and I appreciate all of your hard work. So we are now going to be jumping into Unit 8 for our ELA benchmark materials. So this is going to be switching over to our Earth structure booklet for our close readings text. I did go to the office and make digital versions of all of the stories that we are going to be reading, and I will be posting those to Google Classroom as well as including it into our weekly email. So you will be able to access all of our stories, the digital version of them, instead of having to have the physical booklets or listening directly to the video. So let's go ahead and get started. So this unit is really going to be about examining a different form of genres that we discover in our literary world. So for the last unit, Unit 7, we talked about ancient civilizations, right? It was very, very informational text-based, history-based, right? We used things that we have learned from our ancient civilizations and incorporated them into our materials that we talk about during our lessons. They were all about learning our information from these ancient civilizations, how they've encouraged and helped our world today, what achievements have been transitioned and been shared throughout our generations, and how we continue to use the technological advancements and achievements that they discovered. But for this unit in particular, we're really moving into a science fiction genre. Science fiction can be looked at in 2 or 3 ways, right? It can be science fiction based off of specific scientific fact and knowledge, like what we're going to be working on this week, which is really about the Earth's surface. It can also be looking into science fiction stories, but specifically focused on the science fiction world. They can be technologically based. Anything that really has that science background and storyline is really what's going to fall under science fiction category. So Unit 8 really focuses on the science fiction world. For the next 2 weeks, our reflections are going to be science fiction based and how we can incorporate that genre into our learning in our classroom, or our virtual classroom in this case. So let's go ahead and start off with how we normally we're going to ask our essential question. This week's essential question is, how does the Earth itself inspire human endeavors? So let's go ahead and break this down a little bit. So inspires, this is a cool point. Inspire, what does that mean? How can something be inspiring? We can look at it in 2 ways, right? You can be inspired by someone else, or you can inspire someone else. So I'm inspired by all of you every single day, by all of your hard work, all of your dedication to school. You can also inspire other people, right? So if we're talking specifically about the Earth as a whole, how does the Earth inspire us as humans to go on adventures, to go on journeys? Endeavors, meaning multiple, we can branch that out to endeavors, meaning journeys, adventures, trips, discoveries, right? So how does the Earth itself inspire human endeavors? When we're looking at human endeavors, we're talking about how us as humans go on journeys and endeavors and adventures in our world, in all the different climates that our world has to offer, right? We're kind of in the middle of California. If we drive down south, we're going to hit the beach, we're going to hit the tide pools, we're going to hit the oceans, we're going to be able to explore all of the different life forms living in those oceans, as that could be a human endeavor, right? And the Earth inspires us by us seeing photographs or videos of these tide pools, the ocean, anything that really shows how there's a completely different world living under the sea, and we are at a point in where we live where we can just drive a few hours south and discover this world ourselves. However, if we look at it the opposite side, we can drive a few hours north and we can get to the mountains, right, where there's snow, and we can discover a whole other world. We can go snowboarding, we can go skiing, we can go sledding, we can go hiking through the snow, right? You can go and see these beautiful things if you go up north and see the different world. And it's almost like they're two different worlds, but we are very lucky to live in the Central Valley, that we are in about equal distance to both of these different climates that our Earth has to offer. And how does the Earth itself inspire us, right? It inspires us through photographs, through videos, through movies, seeing these different images or clips into a different climate, a different world, that we are on this Earth ourselves, and we can go through journeys and adventures to discover them. We can also be inspired through social media, right? Through other people's photographs and videos of where they went could inspire us to do the same. So when looking at it as a whole, Earth itself inspires us in multiple ways. It inspires us through adventure, through discovery. All of these different aspects could all inspire us to see the world around us, because Earth is a huge landform. It's not just the United States, right? We can go out of the country, go to different countries and see different cultures, different lifestyles, different economies. Everything that we can discover could be transformed and be showed to us via different outlets, which can in turn inspire us to go on our own adventures. So that's really going to lead us into this portion of the lesson. I really want to talk about, because science fiction is so detailed and information based, it's really important for us to be able to identify the key events and text evidence from the stories that we are reading, whether they are nonfiction or fiction in our case. And remember, nonfiction meaning they're not based on true events, and fiction being they're based on true events through stories. Most informational text is fiction, but a lot of the science fiction genre, if you discover through nonfiction text, can be really creative stories that are being told with this technological focus throughout the story. So if we're going to look over here, this is a clip, almost, I don't want to say clip, portion of a story that we're going to be reading in tomorrow's lesson. And I really want to talk about, we're going to go through and I'm going to model how to identify key events that are being discussed in this specific clip, as well as text evidence that we can use if we were using this specific, if we were to write a reflection about this specific paragraph. What can we pull out of it as text evidence, and what can we pull out of it as the key events to help us with our reflection? So, okay, so I wrote down the clip, and we're going to go through it line by line and talk about what can be used and what's a key event and what could be used as text evidence. Again, remember how we discussed annotating last week? This is really going to be pinpoint and piggyback on the annotating aspects. In turn, or in theory, the goal is to be able to do text evidence and key events while annotating the text at the same time, so that after you can go back when writing your reflection or response or essay, whatever it may be, you can go back to the story and you have already went through the story and wrote down the key events, text evidence, and everything that you can use, which would make your life easier at that point. Okay, so I know this is kind of difficult doing this virtually. Ideally, we would want to be in the classroom and we would be able to annotate text through multiple different activities, so it's easier to comprehend. But unfortunately, this is the circumstances where we are, so I'm going to do the best I can in modeling how you could do this at home right now. And of course, when we come back to school, I'm always available for questions and all of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So this is a piece of science fiction that we took from this week's text, and like I said, science fiction is a genre, but it's very broad. It can include fiction and nonfiction works. So this one talks about glaciers, so this is more of a fictional text, right? It's an informational text, but includes that science background and focus. So if we go from the top, we talk about glaciers have been forming, melting, and moving across Earth's structure for millions of years. So this is kind of a big evidence base. I would call this text evidence that is being discussed in this part of the paragraph. But I think there's three main things that can be put out into our reflection if we're talking about have to back up the point of where glaciers come from, right? So I would say forming, melting, and then I'm going to put moving. I think those are all important for us to discover and use as evidence to show. Say our question was, how do glaciers form? We could say they've been forming through melting or moving across Earth's surface. And then also when it says for millions of years, right, that's important evidence to back up the story and the claims of how glaciers have been forming and how long they've been on the surface of the Earth. And it can really help us be evident and evidence to support our claim. Okay, let's go on to the next section. For a glacier to form, the amount of snow that falls each year must be more than the amount that melts. Okay, so I think that's a really big key event that could be used as evidence, as well as I feel like that is the most key event of the paragraph. So when looking at a key event, say this is my story, right? I have all these lines of stories. Can I have more than one key event per page or like per story? Can I have more than one key event? Yeah, of course. You can have as many key events as the story includes, right? So say this is a key event, this is a key event, this is a key event, and this is a key event. All of these are key events throughout the story, and I can use all of these to help claim and back up and support my argument in the story or reflection that I'm writing. Okay, so I would say, I can't reach all the way over there, but I'm just going to highlight, or I'm going to underline this line and this line. And this one is going to go all the way across. Let me see. Okay, so if I'm underlining this, and I'm going to draw an arrow right here, let me say this is our key event for this specific paragraph, right? So I'm not saying that this is the key event for the entire story. I'm saying for this particular paragraph, this is our key event. So a key event meaning, what does the author want us as the reader to take away? So in this paragraph, when I'm looking at it as a reader, I determined that the author wants us to take away or to remember or to learn from this paragraph that how glaciers are forming. And for a glacier to form, that sentence is what the author wants us to take away. It's the key sentence in the paragraph, and all of the other sentences that are surrounding it are going to be evidence to support the claim. So the author claims, this is his main claim of the paragraph, for a glacier to form, the amount of snow that falls each year must be more than the amount that melts. That's the claim. And everything else in the paragraph is going to be evidence to support that claim. Okay, let's continue. So, when Earth's climate is going through an overall cooling phase, so cooling phase, this could be evidence to support our story. More glaciers form. So if we're looking at it this way, it's saying cooling phase equals more glaciers. So I'm going to circle more. I circled more because it's going to help me remember that when I see cooling phase, it means more. And again, remember, there's no correct or wrong way to annotate the text. When you're annotating a text, it's for you to use when looking back at writing, for when you're writing your paper, reflection, response, whatever it may be. Annotating the text is for you to help when you're writing this. It's going to be a way so you don't have to reread the text every single time you want to look for evidence. You could say, what this is more of that brainstorming when I'm working on my paper. I could say, oh, this is all what I have been looking at. I read through this paragraph. I already marked it. This is my key event, this sentence, this is evidence, cooling phase, more. All of this is going to help me when writing my response, whatever it may be, because I have already went through and annotated the text to where what information I feel is important to mention in my own response to back up my claims. Okay, let's go ahead and do the last sentence. When the climate goes through an overall warming effect, so we just talked about cooling phase, let's go ahead and warming effect, glaciers melt. Now, we talked about how the last sentence said there was more, and we circled it because that kind of symbolized the cooling phase and the more, how they kind of, more glaciers, how they go together. However, there's no less, but melt is considered kind of a similar word to less, right? It's a synonym. So I'm going to go ahead and circle melt so that when I look at this, I see warming effect and it goes to melt. So if I were to continue reading the story, I would already have this paragraph done, right? I already have this paragraph done. Everything's done with annotating. I'm good to go. Now I can continue reading, and then I'll go to the next paragraph, annotate that paragraph. And then when I look back at the story when I'm done, I'm able to see all the different key points that I feel are going to support my claim directly or be my claim when I'm writing the response, reflection, whatever it may be. And I have all of my text evidence already pointed out so that I'm ready to go. Okay, guys, so let's go ahead and wrap up there. We are going into our social studies project this week. So our social studies video is going to be pretty short. I'm just going to talk about the project, and then we won't have any lessons this week because I want you to focus on your project this week. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up there. Okay, guys, good morning. Ms. Sanchez here. We're going to go ahead and briefly talk about our Greek mythology this week for social studies. We're not doing a newspaper. We're going to do our project. So this is the only lesson that's going to go out for social studies this week because I want you to really focus on your project this week. So, okay, so for our Greek mythology project, I included a Google Doc, but I'm also going to include it in our weekly email, the guidelines for the project, but I'm also going to go over them really quickly on here. So for the project, you are going to pick one of the Greek gods and goddesses from the list below, and again, only picking one to write your project on. Okay, so really quickly, on the Google Doc or Word document when you guys receive, it tells you what they're the god or goddess of. For example, like Zeus is the god of the sky, Aphrodite the goddess of beauty. So all of that you're going to go through on the Google Doc. It tells you that. But for this sake of the video, I just wrote them out. So that way you know what you're allowed to choose from. And then you can go on the Word document or the Google Doc and really see what they're the god or goddess of. And then you can make your decision from there. So again, for this project, you are only allowed to select your god or goddess from this list. Okay? These are the ones that I pre-screened and everything that made sure that they were appropriate for our project. So you are only allowed to pick from this list. Okay? And again, I'm going to reinforce that. Only allowed to pick from this list. So, going down the list really quickly, we have Zeus, Typhon, Poseidon, Plutus, Paean, Oceanus, Morpheus, Hypnos, Kratos, Hades, Helios, Hephaestus, Hercules, Hermes, Athena, and Aphrodite. So you guys can pick from these lists. Again, there's no limit. If all of you decide to do your project on Zeus, then all of you are going to do your project on Zeus. Try to pick one that you might not think you would originally pick to try to do something a little bit more fun and creative. But you are going to pick one of these. So say I'm doing my project. I'm going to pick mine on, I'm going to pick Poseidon. So this is mine, so I would just highlight this. So if I picked it, I'm going to pick Poseidon. So my entire project's going to be on Poseidon. That's it. So for the project, you are going to pick one Greek god or goddess from the list, which we already went over. And you are going to write a 2 to 3 page. You can have it double spaced on your word. It's okay if it's double spaced, but it needs to be at least 2 to 3 pages. Okay, because you have an entire week to do it, Monday through Sunday. So there's no reason why you can't complete the 2 to 3 page. Okay, so you have to pick 2 to 3 pages. There's no daily warm-ups for social studies this week. So this is your entire focus for social studies this week. Is going to be your Greek mythology project. That's it. Okay, so you have 2 to 3 page creative story. So you are making this up. There's no right or wrong answers. You are making this up. You're going to write a 2 to 3 page creative story surrounding meaning your Greek god or goddess is the main character. So surrounding your Greek god or goddess. You need to, actually though, you do need to have 2 to 3 factual pieces of evidence. Meaning, look up your god or goddess. So if I'm doing God of Poseidon, I'm going to look up Greek god Poseidon. And an article or Wikipedia, anything's going to come up and it's going to tell you about him. I would need to include 2 to 3 pieces of factual evidence in my story. So factual evidence meaning Poseidon's the god of the sea. So I could say Poseidon is the god of the sea. That's one piece of factual evidence. I could say Poseidon was known to carry around a trident. It's 2 pieces of factual evidence. And if I wanted to do another one, I could say Poseidon was Zeus's brother. 3rd piece of factual evidence. Then I'm done, and the rest of the story is going to be creative. But you have to include 2 to 3 pieces of factual evidence. And then the second part, so that's part 1. So part 1 is your story, and then part 2 is create a colorful / artistic story cover to accompany your story. So part 1 is your story, part 2 is your story cover. So you can do an 8x10, just a regular piece of printer paper, and you are going to draw your story cover. So you have to include your Greek god or goddess on the front of the story cover. You have to draw some sort of reference so that when I'm looking at it, I know exactly who it is. If you're doing this digitally, your story, you can go ahead and upload the digital version of your story and then just take a picture of your cover and upload that as well, okay? So you can take a picture of it and then upload the cover with your story, but you need to be creative with your cover and be creative with your story. Your story could be anything, right? Your character or your Greek god or goddess could be doing anything, and include other characters in the story. But it needs to be 2 to 3 pages. That's the minimum. It has to be 2 to 3 pages. You have to have a creative cover. Your story has to include 2 to 3 pieces of factual evidence about your Greek god or goddess. Okay, so of course, if you have any questions, always ask me. But that's going to wrap up history for this week, or the social studies lessons for this week. For the rest of the week, just really focus on your project.